this is Dustin with the cold cases. We're here with Kale, who his daughter is Elizabeth Green. She went missing in Utah, I believe, April 2024. So, Kale, what was your daughter like?
She was extra friendly, always needed to be the center of attention, silly, uh, as far as I'm concerned, typical teenage girl, in selfies and, like to hang out with her friends. She really loved her family, despite the issues and hardships she's had coming up and growing up. She was really thriving.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was kind of taken aback by is, she was 21 and she was living in a community, I think, of like about 50 people or something.
Yeah, it's super small. And not only was the community super small, but it was really spread out. You're talking about 50 people spread out and throughout like a 10-mile square radius.
Do you think there's any way that may have factored into her disappearing?
Well, honestly, where she disappeared from is the kind of place you go to disappear.
Okay.
It's so remote and there's so few people there. Like I said, it's where you'd go if you wanted to disappear, not where you disappear from necessarily.
Right. Right.
I mean, when I went out there after receiving the news, pretty much, the trailer she went missing from and the ranch that she was supposed to be starting work at the day she went missing were the only, residences that you could really see. I mean, there are a couple trailers. I don't know if those belonged to other people or if the ranch hands stayed there or whatnot. But, in the immediate area, there's probably maybe 5 dwellings for families, whatnot. And then, everyone else was over a mile away this way or that way or
So there's no reason she should have just like basically vanished.
yeah, that's pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's a small enough area that, and, I imagine so few people actually travel there that aren't familiar with it specifically that, anybody in an unfamiliar vehicle would be noticed, and especially, during that time of day.
Yeah. And one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was she had a dating profile that somehow they had to go to a profile to find the dating profile or some weird stuff like that. And I was going to ask you about that. What do you make of that?
I don't know when they were investigating her data trail. They came across several different email accounts and Facebook accounts and whatnot, and her being 21 and being so isolated, I'm not necessarily surprised that she was on a dating site. I was more surprised to find out that she had been sending, adult content through Snapchat or.
Yeah, that's totally normal for her age and everything too.
Uh, yeah, I think though that she was doing that as a with a source of income.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
At least that's because she didn't really have any significant other
Do you
to
think
necessarily be
maybe
doing that with.
do you think maybe that is another avenue we could explore where, somebody who may have bought her adult content like wanted to do something or something?
I mean, I've definitely considered it, but as I said, with as remote as the area is, you'd have to be familiar with it to even find it. Because from what I had been told through the locals of the area was if you tried to GPS it, it'd try taking you through military camp, whatever, fort.
Oh, military land?
Yeah. Proving grounds, actually, where, they do their
Testing.
tank testing and, so, like I said, unless you were familiar with the area, you're not just going to be cruising down the street and, what they called roads were pretty much just paths through the desert.
Yeah. And you wanted to talk about your theories about what happened. So what are your theories about what happened?
I mean, obviously due to what they found through her digital data, whatnot, one of the theories is she agreed to meet somebody for a date or whatever, and they picked her up and never brought her back. But as I said, having gone out there myself and seeing how remote it is, and when me and my fiance went out there and ourselves, within minutes of us arriving, the local group chat started blowing up, who's that, why are they here, kind of thing, which, once again, leads me to believe that, if it were someone who was not from the area that picked her up, we'd have some kind of clues by now.
So you think maybe it was somebody in the area?
I definitely, due to the remoteness and whatnot, you would definitely have to be familiar with the area and to be able to move without necessarily being noticed.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to be a vehicle that's familiar to the area, and well, there's only 50 of those.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe 100 if everybody owned two vehicles, and we're not counting tractors or ATVs. But
if that's the case, it should be easier to investigate, I would think.
well, you would think, but so far nothing's come up from any of her digital data saying that like they found the message saying pick me up here, or I agree to a date, or nothing of that line has. But that is one of the working theories. Before she'd moved back out to Utah, I mean, because she used to live with her mother before, and then her stepbrother raped her, and she'd moved back to Illinois and ended up graduating high school and whatnot, and then she went back out to Utah because she missed her mom, and she completed Job Corps, and then had moved back, from the Job Corps dorms to living with her mom, and was supposed to start that job at the ranch so she could get the money to get an actual ID and try and get.
You said about the stepbrother. Would the stepbrother have been involved?
I mean, I've considered it. Talking to some of his family members and whatnot, and supposedly the police have questioned him. He was out of state and can prove that he was nowhere around to have done that. But I also had found out that about a month or so before Elizabeth went missing, she'd reached out to her aunt on her mom's side and her grandma, asking them to come pick her up and take her back to Texas where they all lived, because said stepbrother had come back to visit the family and whatnot, and she was feeling really uncomfortable. And I also imagine the isolation of where they lived had a lot to do with that as well.
Right. I imagine so. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry.
So one of the other theories that has gone through my mind was, either the stepbrother or stepfather or his family, did something in order, to try and be able to bring the son back home. The only thing that I really have to support that is, it's the most logical kind of motive. And while I was out there after initially finding out that she went missing, the stepfather, and I don't know if he was just like warning me of what we were dealing with because of the area and whatnot, but he'd mentioned that, within a 30-minute drive or so was one of the world's deepest mines, and you could easily throw a body down there and it'd never be found.
Well, that's concerning.
Yeah, that's always stuck in the back of my head, and I don't know if he was just warning me of, hey, this is like the reality of the situation, or if, that's kind of a confession without confessing. As I said, due to potentially trying to get the son back home and whatnot, that would, goes along with a motive, which is, out of all the theories that I've come up with, obviously other than, someone who's trying to traffic people, that's the only one that, like, really makes sense, because I am 100% certain that she didn't decide to go for a hike and get lost in the desert and, or try climbing a cliff,
Well, what I got from this story is don't trust anybody in that. I think it's called Joab County. That's what I got from this. Don't trust anybody there.
Well, I mean, in doing my, due diligence and whatnot, I've noticed many cases, not just in Joab County, but in Utah in general, of people her age and younger just pretty much vanishing. And, then if they have been found, a lot of them have been found with various churches and,
because there's a lot of kind of cults out there or something.
Well, a lot of the things I've been seeing, they're tied into the Mormon church.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if, they're trying to bring them back into the fold or recruit them, or, but I know in every religion, you got your extremists. So, but I just also know that in Utah, one of the primary religions and most practiced is Mormons. Church of Latter-day Saints, and
yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to share?
I don't really have anything else to share as far as evidential. Like I said, I got all kinds of theories depending on, which avenue you're trying to look at, but I can't prove any of them. And from what I've gotten from the police, they've gotten nothing. And I don't know if they're just saying that to, protect their investigation.
What do you think the most important, evidence is in this case?
Well, that's just it. There really is no evidence.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that in itself is the most crucial piece of evidence is the fact that there is no evidence.
Yeah, because if it was somebody out of town, there would be some type of evidence. Somebody would see, or there'd be like some type of, like marks or something. Like they would have found something with the FBI and stuff. And then if it's somebody in town, you would. So if it was somebody in town, like it would be like it is now, where there's no evidence.
Yeah,
Is that right? Is that right?
That's pretty much it. I mean, from what I've been told, they've gone through and they questioned everybody in the town, and most of them came out and helped during the search, and but nothing's came up from anything, which part of me, using that kind of logic and whatnot, it'd have to be somebody familiar to the surroundings, the area, not just knowing the area, but being known in the area so that nobody thought anything when they drove in or drove out.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, the dogs, whatnot, they didn't find any scent or anything leading. And the only way that kind of makes any sense to me is if she'd have been in a vehicle that her scent was already attached to.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Not necessarily, a stranger's vehicle, but, if her scent was attached to, say the stepdad's truck already, because she's, ridden in that plenty of times, if he were the one to have taken her and, came back in the truck, the dogs aren't necessarily going to hit on that, or if they did, nobody'd really think anything of it because
right. Oh my gosh,
it's the family truck.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. You're right.
Or, grandma's truck, or what, I don't necessarily know who all she associated with in the community and who she didn't, and but I didn't see anyone, and I was there for almost a week, and I didn't see anybody there that was like her age or anybody like that for her to socialize with or anything. I saw very few kids, but then again, my main concentration was around the trailer she lived in and the ranch that she was going to work on.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to post this article and I'm going to post this interview on there, and I'll give you a call back right after I hang up on this.
Okay. I'd appreciate you sending me a link too.
Yes, I will. All right.
All right.
One second.